Holistic self-confidence is all about having these 5 aspects completely to the best of your ability, elevated, and you constantly work on them.
Alexandra, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
When we chatted off air a little bit, your story is incredible and so full of nuance and insight. So maybe let's start with your career in music.
Yeah, that started at age 6, born into a family of musicians, and that's when things started getting bad with regards with my self-confidence and self-esteem, because I'm a confidence coach now, but that wasn't the case always. And 29 years in music, then nursing, and then real estate investing along with nursing, and then coaching. But the music career was a long one. Taught me a lot of discipline. When you're born in Eastern Europe to musicians' parents, room for negotiation is pretty much non-existent in many families. But the violin career, it was how do I say that? It really teaches you a great work ethic when you're in a professional family, professional musicians, but it also limits you in many ways, because I was in a specialized music school. So all the subjects were music subjects, minimal science. And at the end, when I graduated, when I was 19, then I went to Music Academy and then came to the US in 2000 to do my master's and doctoral degrees in music. So till the age of 32, when I realized I was not going to make it as a musician, I had no other knowledge base but music. And that's what made things reverse themselves in a very drastic way in my life. And that's how I built everything else from the age of 32 with a very early midlife crisis.
Yeah, it's like you kind of put all your eggs in one basket a little bit, which I can imagine was challenging.
Very much so, very much so.
But I think I want to talk a little bit about the work ethic aspect, because I think this is something I've been trying to explain. I think it's hard to teach discipline and work ethic as an adult. Like the school that I went to very young, that I think really instilled like a strong work ethic, which I noticed comes in handy a lot now as an adult. Like I think my time management skills are really kind of like my superpower, but I think that was so ingrained in me as a child that now as an adult it's a lot easier to practice. But I have some friends who didn't really have that experience, and now as an adult they're trying to figure out how to be better about managing their time, like how to develop that sense of self-discipline. And it's challenging because I don't know necessarily how to explain it to them.
So in my case, it was a little different though, because as far as time management, pretty much the motto was all the time possible you put into practicing the violin. So when I was 6, I was practicing 2 hours. When I was 10, I was practicing 4 hours. When I was in the 6th grade, I was practicing 6-7 hours.
Wow.
8, 9, 10th grade, 9 to 10 hours. And then in academy, sometimes 11 hours. So pretty much nothing else is a priority. So that's not a good time management though, because when I went into nursing and then real estate, then I really learned how to time manage, because there were tons of tasks I had to accomplish if I wanted to be successful. So time management has many nuances. In my case, as a musician with the work ethic, it was the discipline about the violin. The kids may play outside for 7 hours a day in the summer vacation. I was allowed 2 hours a day, 3 hours maximum. Everybody was playing all day long. And that was very irritating, but I had to practice because there was no other way around. So this didn't do me any favors as an adult, because the more you grow, the more responsibilities you have. And you can't just shield them all under the violin practicing in the room between 4 walls for 12 hours a day, or well, minimum 9 for me, it was the case. But so I think you were at an advantage compared to me in that respect, because you were taught about real life way earlier than I was, because many musicians have no clue about real life. And that's why if we're not successful by age 30 and we realize that we're not going anywhere and we need to change professions, many of us become very depressed, extremely hesitant, and never take that first step, because they don't know how to actually manage time outside of the practice room. And they don't know how to communicate and respond to challenges in ways that help them cope with additional stress that has nothing to do with music. Because remember, I knew nothing besides music, minimal science, if at all, because we stopped math after the 8th grade, biology after the 9th. And our biology was extremely superficial, nothing like in the US people study in schools and then in college. So that aspect had to be completely reversed and relearned. And it was just a mess when I was in my early 30s.
What? So, yeah, because, I mean, then you went to nursing school, which is some of the most intense, I think, studies you can do. So I feel like
Yes.
that was a very stark transition from nothing but a musical education to then having to switch completely, going to this very scientific, cerebral experience.
Yes, so I did at the time what I knew best how to do. Put all the time I had on the day to the most important part. So I reversed my
Hmm.
9 hour day practice from violin into reading textbooks for 9 hours a day. That's what I did. And
Okay.
I read some of the thickest books, the A&P and nursing basics, and the chemistry and microbiology book, and some of the psychology books I read 2 times from cover to cover
Wow.
before the classes even started, because I had to build vocabulary
Mm.
and concepts and everything. But that's what happened. And then everything else, buying myself groceries, food, it was put under a very strict timeline and budgeting of time that I had to do it under a certain amount of minutes and then go back to the textbooks because I was so behind.
Yeah. But it's still really amazing to me that you did that, because I think most people, like you said, under those circumstances where you're forced to change, are hesitant, or maybe like dip their toe in a little bit. But it seems like you just shifted everything from the one extreme with violin to now another with schooling. And I just think that the ability still to limit yourself even to like grocery shop for a very specific amount of time is is really amazing. And I'm so curious to know, is that something else that your family really instilled in you? Is that a trait that you had just because growing up
No.
you were like, this is what I have to do, and then you sort of just never thought about any other way forward?
No, my family was terrified when they knew that I was changing careers. And actually, there was much more to that because I was also working 3 jobs at a time to support myself. And
How?
and the other very big psychological thing, Maddie, was somebody like me who is a musician and other art people or sports people their whole life for that matter too. Anybody who is dedicated, their invested a ton of time since early childhood into something that didn't work out. You think, okay, so I didn't make it in 26 years, 29 years as a violinist. How on earth am I going to learn a profession in 4 years, 5 years, 10
Mm,
years? Impossible, right? So that was the other thing that I had to overcome, and I overcame it the best I could by studying all these hours
yeah.
because that was the all thing I knew how to do. And to my biggest surprise and like astonishment and disappointment, none of my peers in nursing school studied as much as I did. None of them.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean they were actually knew the material. That was like, how can you possibly not study when you're going into such a responsible profession and people's lives are in your hands in many cases on these hospital floors. So, but that didn't dissuade that I was doing the right thing because again, I was convinced I had to learn things the best I could, memorize the best I could, and that was just my really only hope that I could make it in my new life and put all my self doubts and everything behind me with this work ethic. That was what I had to begin with. And it lasted for quite a few years. And then I was able to relax once I settled into the profession for a couple of years and was more in control of my ability to trust myself that I could make it no matter what. But it took
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs relate to that. There's like a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot
Mm.
of wondering when the craziness will end, and you finally feel like the business is secure and therefore you are secure. And it's always kind of like a moment of scrambling before you're able to settle in. Do you remember that moment when you felt like, okay, we're good?
Yes. I remember the moment when I settled in with the idea that the craziness was never going to end, that there was no one going to be security, that security is a myth.
Mm,
But I learned to live with that and not be
yeah.
afraid of it anymore. And then I was able to turn my entire anxiety into a highly motivating factor and really put it to work for me instead of me being its slave and, uh, decrease my quality of life because of anxiety. But the moment you realize that, then you're golden. That's how
Yeah,
you overcome all the problems.
can you talk a little bit more about that? Is it like an element of surrenderance where you're like, I know that there will never be any stability, so then you sort of sink into the present and you're like, what matters is what I do in these 24 hours every day, and if you put in the work and you feel good about it, then it won't lead you astray. Is that the thought process?
To an extent. The other part of the equation is that you need to put other people's needs before yours. as far as
Interesting.
your profession goes and your entrepreneurship. So in the case of the nursing, of course, the patients are the highest priority while I'm at work. In case of my real estate businesses, my residents, the residents of my properties are the priority, and their needs and whatever needs to be covered there, and anything concerning their safety and quality of life, that is a priority. When it comes to my time for me, there is no higher priority than me at that moment. When you divide your day in the parts that your part, me time, and then everybody else's time, then things get very well under control. And it's not necessarily balanced, because if you try to balance, then you'll never have abundance. But if you give everything of yourself in each of these moments to whatever you dedicate your time at that particular moment, then you have abundant results. Okay?
Right.
But when people talk about balance, I think they're really trying to work as little as possible and shy away from work and kind of preserve their sanity for the sake of their laziness. And I don't agree with that balance idea at all, because it really doesn't work, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've almost like bent the tree back too far the other direction, where I think a lot of the previous generations, like I know my mom's generation, was so obsessed with work, and they really devoted 100% of themselves to that. And there really wasn't this idea of a work-life balance. It was just like, and I know my dad too, he worked so hard. And even at his position now, he still takes so much of it home, and because he's in operation, so he has to be somewhat like on call 24/7. And then now I think like my generation and then the generations coming up now are all about, this like work-life balance. And I think with that comes such a skewed idea that there's no, I just think that they're like, oh, well, I don't want stress at all. They don't want any sort of hardship or challenge, as opposed to saying exactly what you said, which is like when you're at work, you dedicate yourself 100%. And then when you're off, create boundaries. And then that's where your time is dedicated 100%.
Yes.
And that's where the balance occurs, is it's like you dedicate yourself 100% to whatever you're doing in the moment, as opposed to saying, I'm not going to work hard, or I'm not going to show up to the best of my abilities at any given moment.
Yes, I think people feel robbed of their ability to manage their time properly, and they like to place the blame on others in the work and the situation, the political situation, the economic situation. Actually, it really is up to you. It really is up to you how you structure your life. The problem of many people is that, and that's always been the case, not just your generation or my generation or whatever generation, but very few people know what exactly would make them happy. People have no clue what they want. And especially in a country like the United States, when people are so overly satisfied with things that they really don't need, that sense of boredom and constant craving for entertainment is just devastating people's lives, because they really lose sense of themselves and what their real purpose is. They don't want to find the purpose, and it's sad to see, because I come from a very poor country. I mean, Bulgaria was miserable during socialism, and you couldn't find anything in the grocery stores or in the retail stores. I never forget, we went shopping, with my mother hated shopping for clothes because she became claustrophobic. She would faint in the store, but there were these extremely poor choices, very few choices, and children's clothes the colors were like brown, gray, horrible shades of beige. I mean, it was nothing like in the developed countries where you see all these beautiful colors. You would know immediately a child whose parents were working abroad by the clothes they were wearing. I mean, we had so little. And although compared to the generation of the Great Depression in the United States, those people had even less. And so, I mean, compared to what are you deprived of what? Here is just, the consumerism is beyond any control. I just can't comprehend how. And when people drown in these credit card debts, that generation that doesn't want to put much effort, but then they like to consume. And they wonder why nothing happens in their life the way they want it, but they really don't know what they want. In my observation, and that's where most of the problems stem from.
Yeah, it's like there's something like in their soul that's craving their sense of purpose and fulfillment, and because it's not being met, it's then being fed into like excess consumerism or excess alcoholism or excess in some other way, shape, or form because it's like looking for an outlet and they don't know where to channel it.
Right.
And I'm curious because I think you've gone through so many different changes, particularly with your career, that it's like, do you remember when you had a moment when you figured out exactly what your purpose was or what you decided you wanted and then you were able to go for that?
There were several moments like that, but the whole point is to learn as much as you can in life and stay
Mm,
current with your current times because things change so rapidly that you can be useful to people in many more ways that you're even able to imagine at any point in your life right now because
mm,
nothing is like 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Everything is so fast and you can learn amazing things that you don't expect because you may like something may come faster to you, to your abilities, to your skills, to your intellectual understanding. No matter what generation you are, I've seen very much people much older than me operate computers in a phenomenal way, and they've discovered things that I never thought were possible, and they just it help others discover these things, and they find a new purpose in life. So, with all the online options for entrepreneurship, connections, networking, and information gathering, you're unlimited.
yeah.
But the other side is that people get overwhelmed that they don't know how to make sense of most of the information, and then they feel very limited and they shut down and they truly stay uninformed for decades, which I think is a very, very shameful, a crying shame of waste of time of their good years because they could have done so much more for the last 15 years than they actually did. And
Yeah.
I have very close family members examples for that. And it is, you either want it or you don't want it, and the intimidation from technology can be a big stopping point. And your purpose in life, I have found many purposes in my life. For one thing, I know how to do a business to work for other people. My clients, they're extremely happy with what I provide for them because it's extremely affordable and
Yeah.
it's good quality. And that's the purpose of any business: solve the problem without stripping the people of all their money, and
Yep.
keep them, really grateful and happy with what they have. And just that's the business. But then, as far as the profession, the learning of the profession and being somebody else's employee, that's also a very important mindset to relate how to do the best for the clients, which in my case is patients, very sick people, so they
Mm,
actually feel taken care of and truly learn something for themselves, so they can reverse their chronic conditions in a system that perpetuates management of chronic conditions for decades, so they can
yeah.
keep you sick forever
Yeah.
until you die, but you are an asset to the system. And my purpose is to teach them how to stop being an asset to the system. That's one of my biggest purposes. And then
Yeah.
my other purpose is the financial front. I mean, that's the health front, right? The financial front, I teach people how to become financially independent by building these cash flowing assets that they don't have to worry about the job. If they don't want to work, they don't have to work. If you want to work, be my guest, absolutely. But choices in life are created by accumulating knowledge and taking action and taking the risks and failing. And then you understand what your real choices are.
Yeah. And it sounds like I think the tendency for people to, when they say like find your purpose, I think they associate it with something external. So be that a job or a title or um, something thereof. Whereas it sounds like instead you were able to see that you have everything that you need internally and that your purpose is simply just to learn and grow and to be helpful to others. And that purpose then manifests in different ways. For your case, it's financial, it's teaching people how to have confidence, and then it's also treating patients so then they can treat themselves. And I think that's really key because for myself, I feel like it was a very similar experience where I was always looking to define myself by some sort of role or accomplishments that I had. And I found that that was such an empty pursuit because every time I would achieve something and you're supposed to feel really good about it, you're supposed to be proud, it was just sort of like a ticked off my to do list. And then I was like, what do I do now? As opposed to, I think still recently it's been an adjustment to say that really my purpose is that I want to help people on like a really big scale, and that's what led me to podcasting, and the tech platform that I'm a co-founder of is very much aligned with that space. But once I realized that my passion really had to deal with helping with others, it allowed me to then expand my thought processes to be like, how can I do that? How can I show up in that way? And
Exactly.
yeah, and then it also manifests in smaller ways, like when I'm out and about, I love to give compliments when I see it, and they're always genuine, but it makes an impact in small ways, and then also finding ways to do it in bigger ways makes it so there's always opportunity to find fulfillment. It's not project based or it's not career based. It's more like this is just who I am and I'm expressing that in multiple channels.
And that is exactly the spiritual side of our existence. The power of the spiritual side of your existence to every moment to find some sense of fulfillment, whether through others, helping others, or through learning something new for your own sake or for the sake of helping those who care to be helped. Okay, that's a very important point. But what you're saying basically very much aligns with my spiritual understanding about purpose and anything else, because spirituality can have two sides, the one we just discussed, or your ability to perfectly maintain your sanity in spite of everything that's happening around you. That's the other, side of spirituality. But okay, because we overcome lots of challenging in the process of learning and helping others and helping ourselves. But helping, it irritates some people when I say, okay, helping, they say, well, why do you think I need help? Okay, it's all about enrichment or some to change your perspective a little bit or a different idea so you can do more than what you're doing right now. But with the sense of helping, the way we think about it, sometimes it becomes a barrier. It erects a barrier between you and the person that you are trying to, help, but actually improve their quality of life or help them understand how they can improve their quality of life. If it becomes like an independent channel to them and becomes their idea, then it's, I think that's the real purpose of me being there, like a mediator between them and their decision, and not to put it in their heads, because it's not always received in a way that I would like to be received if I, impose an opinion or a viewpoint. And with sick people and with investing clients and coaching clients, it's a vast experience of reactions that you get from the other people, and you learn to truly navigate through their reactions and moods and ways to understand help, because everybody has a different idea of how they can be helped.
Yeah.
And it can be very messy sometimes in a relation
I
with
can imagine. I mean, I think about it like anytime I'm talking to one of my friends and they say something where I have to sort of be like, maybe this isn't the best thing for you. It sounds like you're very unhappy. There's an opportunity to make a change here. And those conversations can often be uncomfortable because nobody likes to be told that they're going down the wrong path or that their decisions aren't the ones that they should be making. It's definitely like a challenge to their ego, and it can sometimes be uncomfortable. And like, I find that I have a very small group of friends as a result.
Oh, absolutely.
There's not a lot of people where you can have those kinds of
Was
honest
like two
conversations.
probably. I hope you don't
Truly.
have more than. I hope you don't have more than two, because that's if you have more than two, that's way too many.
Right? Because how do you do that on a regular basis as a friend? Like a true friend is somebody who will be willing to have the tough conversations with you, and because they truly care about you. Whereas I think anybody else is going to say like, oh, it's too uncomfortable for me, so I'm not going to go deep into that. But it's incredibly necessary. And I'd love to get your tips on how you navigate those kinds of conversations, because I think it's applicable to any sort of challenging conversation anyone might have in life.
So during such a tough conversation, I am disposable. So I am ready to be trashed out of their life at any point in time. I don't care. But the second I start hearing excuses, I immediately hold them accountable for the excuses. I nail it right there. I'm going to listen to, I'll let them speak, but after they finish the sentence, I'll say, so this is not an argument. This is an excuse. And if you don't understand the difference between an argument and an excuse, you will never, never be able to hold yourself accountable. So I very early address behaviors that I feel are detrimental not only to their health or finances or relationships, spirituality or career, but also to the nature of the conversation, to the purpose of the conversation. Detrimental statements in the forms of excuses or justifications, rationalizations, you name it. So if they're receptive to that first, me putting my foot down and saying, no, this is not the direction we're seeking here, then the conversation goes very well, actually. And by the end, we have a result, some kind of a constructive idea or an area of ideas, brainstorming and all that. I can tell very quickly if the conversation is going to go in the wrong direction. And in some cases, like with the sick people, for example, I don't push it too hard because I know they've been through a lot, and their sense of security is very different from mine. And if they're really not ready for a tough conversation, even if they say they are, I try here and there, but depending on what they respond, then I might really leave it for a different time. But as far as coaching clients, because you're paying for coaching, if you're paying, that means you've committed to really change. So you need to hear the things that you need to hear. So
that's what they're
then
paying for.
I can be more unpleasant in those situations. As far as friends, and it's sad, Maddie, because as far as friends, my friends are friends from 20, 25 years ago. Those are the friends. All of them are remote because if they were close by, they probably won't want me as a friend if they see me often enough, because I tell them things that they don't like to hear.
Yeah.
Some friendships are best maintained from very long distance and every once in a while. And that's a sad discovery I've had, but I've learned to live with it too, because I used to be a very attached person to my friends when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And that's normal for many people. But with all the disappointments I've had with relationships and people's ways, I really have learned that I'm disposable in a relationship. And if they want to kick me out, I'm fine with that. I won't kick them out. I might make myself less available if I see that things are going nowhere and they keep complaining and stepping on the same stone for years because they just don't want to do anything but just complain. So be it. You can complain, but my time is just as valuable. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting.
And how did you get to learn all of these things? Like, not a lot of people, I find, are able to step back and see life from this perspective. I think there's like a sense of groundedness and a greater understanding of people and what your purpose is here on this earth, like what you're supposed to do while you're here, and the kind of lessons that you're supposed to learn. I don't know, I had my own experience around getting to this place and like dealing, I think it first came with dealing with my own like big issues. And then once that happened, I was able to see it much more clearly in others.
Exactly.
And then make other choices around that. And it happened for me in such a very short amount of time. Like, it was very expedited over the pandemic. But what has your experience been like? Because I don't get to talk to a lot of people who see life from this perspective.
How I learned that? Well, I read a lot for one thing, but then I did martial arts very intensely for 12 years.
Cool.
Very intensely. And I learned 4 basic concepts. I mean, besides the techniques, of course, because anybody can learn a technique, but the black belt mentality is a completely different story. You need several years to adopt that, especially somebody like me who was extremely low confidence for over 2 decades. But the 4 things I learned from martial arts were first of all, self-control. I was very emotionally uncontrolled. With martial arts, you can do that. So pain is a great teacher. So emotional control. Then respect for others. That was another good lesson from pain that I learned. Severe physical pain. The third concept was resilience, perseverance. Huge concept. And finally, self-respect. I don't know why for me that came last, because I didn't have much self-respect for a long time. And my whole lack of self-confidence and lack of self-esteem was very much self-imposed, self-perpetuated over decades of time because of my being socially awkward as a kid. And then I thought it was really cool to be pessimistic, and all these things, eventually you believe these. And then they start manifesting very badly. In my case as a musician, poor performance on stage. That what happened for many years. And it was just a bad catch-22 with my own mindset. But martial arts got me out of this, and then the new profession, because when you really deal with people who are dying or severely sick, you can't just dwell on your own BS.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that many health professionals don't dwell on their own BS, but they're poor healthcare professionals. You want to be a good healthcare professional, you kind of detach yourself from yourself and serve others for the purpose of your profession. And that also helped quite a bit, because you really see people with real problems and you realize, I really been an idiot all these years, and stop complaining and help around, because your help is needed. Your two healthy hands and a bucket are needed to collect some trash and make things better for other people.
Yeah.
So gradually you learn that mindset. And then if you become an investor, that's a whole other set of responsibility, because then you're responsible financially for your wealth building and for the well-being of those who you work with financially. And that responsibility also taught me a lot gave me a lot of perspective, very different perspective on life.
It's so interesting. I feel like those three things all hit on like the three most important aspects of our human experience, which is the like mind, body, and soul experience. Having the finances, it's like mental, and also having the martial arts is somewhat like physical and spiritual. And same with health. So health is like mind and also spiritual, because you're, using so much of your heart. And it's like those three experiences created kind of a trifecta of being able to expand your perspective on life. I've always been really interested in martial arts. It's never something I've been able to maintain as a practice, but I think it's because it is a practice. It's not just a sport. It's all encompassing. It has so much more. And I would love for you to dive into your experience a little bit deeper, because I'm purely just so fascinated and curious by the experience, because if I think it is what it is, then I might get into it again.
It was a dream of mine since the third grade, and I was completely unallowed to mention it because I was a little violinist, and my father was petrified by the idea that I was secretly practicing in our bedroom. We had a shared bedroom when I was a kid. And when I shared this with him, I expected he would be elated. He put me down, he exploded. 15 minutes, he yelled for 15 minutes, so I was not allowed to mention martial arts ever again. So my opportunity to start martial arts was at age 30. I was in the US. Wow. I had already, 2006, so the next year I defended my doctoral monograph, but I happened to move into a house that was very close to a karate dojo. And I said, why not fulfill the dream now? What if I'm 30? Yeah. I'm still pretty, basically, I was into yoga for 7 years before that. But the teacher decided I was going to be a good martial artist, and I really liked it. So then I ended up changing schools. I went with a national champion and his wife, also a national champion, the Tierney martial arts studio. It was amazing. That's where I actually earned my black belt. And then here in Arizona, I didn't find the same style because they were in Syracuse, New York all these years. And then I moved to Arizona with my boyfriend. We moved here. We couldn't find an equivalent style at all. I did Aikido for 2 years. After that, another deadly sport, but martial art. But again, things got kind of weird with the politics in the dojo and things that I didn't approve of. And I said, let's hit the gym real hard. And at 41, I hit the gym. Now I'm a fitness maniac. But the martial arts experience always stays with you because it was a long time. And that fulfilled dream really teaches you perseverance in the real dojo, which is called life, right? So if you apply the concepts of martial arts, all that integrity that the true martial artists maintain throughout their lives, you will be able to see that it is the same thing with everything else you touch in your life. And it's fascinating. And I loved especially with the younger students who were teenagers, to see how confident they were with anything else they did. And I knew I was right when I was a kid that I wanted to be a martial artist. I wasn't allowed to, but I don't blame my parents. They just wanted my safety because, God forbid, I broke a finger or a hand. I couldn't be able to practice the violin. So to them, that would be a real tragedy. And it's understandable. And they were just as against of me starting the martial arts as they were later with me changing professions. But all the very important decisions I've taken in my life, they were against. And now if I make a major decision, my dad passed away, but if my mother is against, I know I'm right. Then eventually it turns out to be true. So that's a very good compass. It's a good compass. Yes. I mean, she has the best intention, mind you. She's a very smart woman, extremely intelligent, also has vast experience in many ways herself. However, our personalities are very strong. That's the only similarity. We have extremely strong personalities. But as far as values and goals and desires, they're very different. Yeah. And that's where things get very interesting in some conversations.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I relate a lot. Yeah. She's across the ocean. That's good. That's a good thing. But
I relate a lot to that. My mom lives in China, and growing up, she's so tough, and my mom is amazing. Like, she's an entrepreneur. She came from nothing and made an incredible career for herself. And, but we both are very stubborn. We're both very strong personalities. Right. And just like you said, our goals in life are very different. At least, like, on paper, they may seem similar, but the ways that we go about them are very different. And so it does like create a lot of tension. And anytime it's hard to say, I think, like what my real goals are, because I know it's going to be met with tension, and I kind of just have to trust myself to get there. And then I can tell her about it later, and I can be like, this was sort of my plan all along. And if I had told you, I knew you weren't going to be able to go along with it. But that was a tough challenge that I had to accept, was like our relationship was not going to be what I thought it was going to be. I always wanted to have like a best friend mom, but that was just not going to work out for us. And to have
is she proud of you now? Is she proud of you now, though? Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sure she's proud of you. Yeah,
definitely. She definitely brags about me to her friends, and navigating our relationship was definitely a challenge, but it was almost as if I had to like mourn the loss of what I thought it was going to be, and then accept my mom for who she is and interact with her in a way that's healthy for both of us while maintaining boundaries, and then almost like rebuild from there. And that has been a major help in ensuring that like we don't fight as often as we used to, because I think before I was like trying to push because I wanted a different experience as opposed to like accepting the reality of the situation and moving forward with that. And that gave me a lot more confidence in family vacations and spending time one-on-one and stuff like that. Because before, I think I just always felt like I was still a kid, even though I'm an adult now, you know?
I very much can relate to what you're saying. It took me a long time to realize that their purpose really is not to be our friends. Parents shouldn't be our friends. Their main purpose is to keep us safe and to make us independent. Mm-hmm. If they're really good parents. And that doesn't jive with friendship all the time. I'm not saying that some parents who are friends with their children haven't been extremely successful. Mine didn't happen to be that way. Apparently yours also. But in all honesty, a parent is not your friend. Yeah. And the disappointment is big when they don't react the way we would like them to react. And we sometimes feel really deprived of the understanding we crave. Yeah. But other times they can surprise us. They show understanding when we least expect it, and it's like, wonderful. Right? Like, that's a more rare moment, but it happens every once in a while. But I can very much relate to what you're saying, because I had very similar challenges with my parents, and again, they meant the absolute best. They meant the absolute best. Just the way they expressed it sometimes could be very hurtful. And but that's maybe just part of building your perseverance and everything. But when you detach yourself, you can really appreciate what they taught you. Because I have found that the better memories stay longer if I'm farther away. Yeah. And occasionally I feel angry with some other, like I have a bad dream, something that happened 30 years ago, and I relive it in a dream, and I wake up sweaty with anger and like deprivement. But I said, well, that's in the past. I mean, that's really you can. It's very difficult with parents. It can be.
Yeah.
But I think I mean, right now you're independent and you're grateful for what she taught you, and she's proud of you. My mother is the same way. She says she's so proud, and all the time now she repeats that. I mean, I wish she said this when I was a kid, when I was learning the She was just so damn critical, because she's a music critic on top of that. She's the most renowned music critic in Bulgaria. So I grew up with that, So But now it's different, and it's great that it's different. It's just part of your existence, and it's much better than having a really detached relation with a parent, which I also see a lot, and it's sad to see because it's a deep sense of unfulfillment that I would never like to experience at any moment.
Yeah, and I think it definitely played a role in shaking my confidence at such a young age because of that criticism. And then I think like throughout my teens and college, I tried to create this false sense of confidence where I was like, oh, I'm so great. Like nothing is wrong with me and like I'm amazing. And then as an adult now, I've had to sort of rebuild what my understanding of self-confidence looked like and find it really like find the true idea of confidence for me. But I'd love to talk a little bit about what you walk your clients through in terms of how to become more confident within themselves.
So, with my experiences with all these areas, I really find that what really shakes people's confidence are basically three things: poor health, poor financial situations, and poor relationships. So we really focus on that. Now, the other two aspects of life are the career and spirituality, which I focus very much on as well because they're connected to the other three. But in many cases, it's either one or two or the three that are really in a bad shape in a person's life. Now, mind you, I'm a home care nurse. I go to people's homes, so I witness a lot of their family relations in the home.
Right.
It's not like when I was working in the hospital where you see them at their absolute worst, but you may or may not see a family member. In the homes is different. So you really get a grasp of relationship quality and what's a priority, what's not a priority, and how their priorities shape their relations. It's quite interesting to observe. And I also get exposed to many cultures because in Arizona, you see, you have natives, you have Latinos, you have the blacks or inner city blacks, and you have the white, affluent and not so affluent. So a ton of experience. But with the clients, we focus on the 5 life aspects extensively. So it's health, it is spirituality, it's career, finances, and relationships. Because people confuse career with finances. It's not the same. So career is how you learn marketable skills and now how you're helpful to society. Finances is how much you keep of what you earn through your career or business. And then how you invest it in assets that cash flow for generations.
Yeah.
And after 5 or 10 years, you can choose to work or not to work. Your choice. Okay, but you can in a healthy way, you can choose that without depriving yourself from anything, depending on your life goals. So this is the coaching program. We really dig into all 5 aspects because people tend to focus on 1 or 2 and then neglect the rest. And then we start digging into the rest and we see, look, this is really not working well. And that's what's preventing your main problem from resolving because you've been neglecting all these things. And then they see, oh yeah, that's right. And every single time we find something that they really have put off for years.
Yeah.
And if they paid a little bit of attention and put some work into it for all these years, things wouldn't be where they are. It's hard to elevate people's hope when so many people are wrong in their lives. The pandemic didn't do it any better. But lots of people realized their self-worth from the pandemic when they got cheated from work and resources and all that. And they found that, there's a lot more lying around than lack of integrity from powerful people than I ever imagined. And that can be crushing or empowering. And many people have found they got empowered because they started believing in their ability to make a better judgment all of a sudden more than they used to before.
Yeah.
Okay, because when you see that powers that be are completely unreliable, then who do you have besides yourself to rely on? Nobody. Right? So that helped. The sense of depression, anxiety, and hopelessness in many people is still there. With some is permanent damage, depending on their age. But I really focus on all these 5 aspects. I don't let anything slide because I don't want them going again into the direction of single-mindedness and then ignoring everything else because it's not working well. Holistic self-confidence is all about having these 5 aspects completely to the best of your ability, elevated, and you constantly work on them without rest, basically.
Yeah, I tried to explain something similar to this to one of my friends the other day because she suffers from lack of self-confidence because of a myriad of reasons of what happened in her life. And she was like, but, I look at you and you're so full of confidence. And I was like, the reason that happens is because I stopped trying to fix small problems where I would be like, oh, I'll just get eyelash extensions because that'll make me feel prettier, or I'll go to the gym because that'll make me feel prettier. And it wasn't about solving those small problems. It was instead focusing on things, doing things every single day that made me feel proud of myself. Whether that was giving my 100% at work, contributing in a valuable way. And that was going to an exercise class that I really like, that I feel excited to go to. And then because I'm excited to go, I give 100% in that class and I leave feeling really fulfilled because I'm like, I didn't take the easy way out when I could. I decided to do the full plank instead of the modified version.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's, same thing, I guess, with like spirituality. I could take the easy way out in a situation and not speak up for myself and say what needed to be said to preserve my boundaries, which is something I would have done before because I was very anti-confrontational. But I would go home and feel disappointed in myself and be like, ugh, I should have said it. I should have said, no, I don't want to go to this party. And now I'm stuck having to go. And then it was like, after each of those individual moments when those learning lessons occurred, I would take it in and be like, I'm never going to make that mistake again. And then every time I don't make that same mistake. And I find that doing stuff like that every day is what has led me to build a sense of self-confidence. And I'm glad that you said it's all 5 areas because it does encompass more than just going to the gym. Like confidence is not going to come just because you start exercising. It has to be confidence, I think, right, comes from you, and you then as a person project a reality that is multifaceted. There's a lot of aspects to your reality. And in particular, like, when you think about it, dividing it into those 5 categories. And if any of those 5 categories is shaky, that means that that part of you is lacking in some way, shape, or form.
You're not in control.
Yes. Yes. And so if you don't address all 5, it will continue to you'll have like a house that's on a shaky foundation, or like there's mold growing in one section, and that will eventually cause exactly a collapse of the whole house. It's very interesting that nobody thinks to do it from that perspective.
Some people do, but very few do, and this is why you see all the problems you see when you look around.
Yeah. And I think your takes on America have also been very interesting because you're sort of in a third party perspective, and to hear about that has been very eye opening for me as well because I see it. I've lived abroad a lot, so I feel like I have a different experience and understanding of America coming back. Now, everyone asks me, they're like, oh my gosh, aren't you so glad to be back in the US? And I'm like, sure, it's great to be close to family. But now I think that I see the positives and negatives of everything. I just have a much broader perspective on that.
It's a great country full of opportunity if you know how to use it and how to apply yourself. It is the best country to live if you want to prosper.
Interesting.
But people don't see it when they don't travel the world. They take a lot for granted. And they always want more and more and more without applying themselves to it. But if you live around the world just like you have, I've traveled a lot, quite a bit as well, but you get all these different perspectives, especially if you had a chance to live in certain places for a year or so or longer. Then you really appreciate what you have at home.
Yeah,
At least that's what I've heard from every American who has traveled a lot, and they say, I'm just so glad to be back here, and I can do so much more with my life now that I didn't realize other people would crave to be able to do, but they can't because of the places they live in. And it's fascinating how it changes your perspective when you see other places of the world.
Totally. And it kind of comes back to that idea that you have everything that you need within you. It's just whether or not you know how to apply yourself to get what you want.
That's right.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to close. Alexandra, this has been really illuminating. I appreciate all of your insights and expertise and your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.